Hi, starting the awkwardly awesome podcast in 3, 2, 1.
Hey, we're on.
Well, welcome, Chris. I'm already laughing because that video is just so great.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I figured, the way that the world is right now, that's how we get to introduce each other. So I may as well be wearing a mask in my intro video.
Yeah, exactly. I'm so honored to have you as my first guest on Awkwardly Awesome podcast because it's fitting because you we met 5 years ago when I really didn't have a clue with what I was doing with my brand. My website was how would you describe my website back then?
It was a starting point.
It was a starting point. My website was very much at a starting point, and I had these big dreams, and you really helped me translate them into all we have going on now. And so my first question is like, from the beginning, with the exception of the very first thing you sent me, which we'll get into that story later. but from the beginning, you really challenged me to see beyond what I thought I could do, and whenever I give you a project, it's almost cliche for us right now. I give you a project, I have a very elementary vision of it and something very elementary I want, and then it comes back like 20 times as good, way beyond what I could have envisioned, including this actual podcast setup which you created. So what's your drive to make things so excellent?
Well, thank you. First of all, that's a huge compliment, and you're always so good to me, with allowing me the space to develop this stuff, but also with the encouragement, inspiring me to continue going above and beyond wherever possible. To rewind real quick, I feel like to talk about where you were at the beginning. I just remember, my introduction to you. I had met you a couple times, but kind of just in passing. But then I just remember being in the audience of a place where you spoke at, and I just remember when you spoke on stage, I was just at a place in my life where it broke through whatever stories and lies or anything else I was telling myself as to why I couldn't be who I was. And it just kind of broke down that entire barrier and hit me in my core. And I just, from that moment on, I was like, you know what? This guy deserves to be seen. This is incredible. The story he tells, the power he has, the humor you had on stage, everything. I got to experience it all, and I experienced it all firsthand. And basically, when later on we knew, I'm sure we can mention her by name, but Heather, who was kind of helping you out and everything. She didn't have anything to do with the first website or anything, but she was kind of helping out there. And I lived with Heather at the time, and I remember kind of seeing the sort of materials and everything you're playing with, and I was just like, oh man, this doesn't capture any of that essence of who he is or what I experienced. And I just know from the get-go, when you and I started working together, it was like, I want to do something. I want to take my talents and my know-how with branding and with everything else, and try and introduce this guy to the larger world, to people who don't just see him on stage, in his essence, if you will. And we've been kind of doing that. That every since we've been working towards it, and I think we finally struck a cool place where we've got a little bit of everything out there. But yeah, it all started with you, man. You made an impact on me, and that just drove me to want to do what I could and lend my talents to try and help you. Now, that didn't answer the question at all, but would you mind repeating it?
Maybe I'm so fortunate that you were inspired and came on to like help me get all this out. And for the people watching, you're so powerful. You never know who you're going to inspire. You never know who you're going to bring into your life. So as often as you can, speak as your true self and be confident.
Well, thank you, brother.
But let's start with the fun story, because it really is very funny in retrospective. So we were working on my doing our first big project together, and I'm so excited because it's the sizzle reel. It's the video the speakers need to help them at their best. Help them look the best. And then you send me like the sizzle reel in progress, and it was very interesting. Do you remember that?
I do. Yeah, it was very much in progress. I remember we talked about the sizzle reel, if we will, the trailer, or the speaking reel, whatever you want to call it. And we were putting it together, and we had these grand schemes to launch it out into the world. And it was taking a little bit longer to put it all together, because one thing that should be mentioned at that time is, though I had some old school TV production experience and I had gone to school initially for film, all of that was on analog. I had never done anything on the digital end, right?
Wow.
So, and I wasn't even using the right program. I was using iMovie, which is kind of the built-in thing that comes with your Mac. And it's great if you're putting together an amateur video, but it's not necessarily known as a high-functioning, video editing program, such as like Premiere or Final Cut. But anyway, so that's what I had to work with, and my determination was to get something and put it together for you. And I remember I said, okay, I'm going to get you the rough cut over here, and let me know what you think. And I remember I sent the rough cut, and then I didn't hear anything back. I was like, okay. And then, if I recall right, I got an email back, and it was something along the lines of, hey, I saw the rough cut and it was real neat, but I'm not sure that essentially that we're on the same page with this. I was envisioning kind of a trailer or speaking reel, if you will, that had some some clips of me speaking and kind of a narrative throughout. And I'm sitting there thinking as I'm reading this, like, well, that's what I did. What the hell did he see? So, I forget what happened exactly, but I went back and I looked at the clip, and it was oh, I wish we had it right now to show. If we do an edit of this podcast later, we should add the originals in here so people can see what we're talking about. But essentially,
actually, I come up to see you and Heather one day, and you came to ask me, well, what do you think of that video? And I'm like, so we go up to your room and look at the video that you sent, and it ended up not being quite what you thought you sent. Huh?
Right. And what it was is my kids had been doing a jogathon fundraiser for their school. And so I had been...
Which is a noble thing to do for a school.
Right, absolutely. And it's really the school's only big fundraiser, right? So I was trying to go all out that year and practice for your reel by actually making a little goofy, and it was Star Wars theme that year, right? So making a little goofy jogathon practice iMovie, if you will. And so I had put a little scroll together about their jogathon, and I was going to, I was mainly playing around. I don't even know if I was going to release it, but somewhere along the line, I ended up erasing your trailer with this practice one, or vice versa. Something
it combined them.
That's what it was. It combined.
Way.
Yes, it combined it in some sort of weird way. I just remember watching it, and the scroll went up, and then you were on there, but the audio wasn't synced, and yeah. And then I think that I had even put a little action figure in there, kind of to work with the jogging thing as a practice thing, and it wound up in there. It was just a mess.
It was a hot mess.
And I just remember watching it and laughing so hard, but also feeling bad because it's like, crap, what happened? I don't know where the original is. And then we looked all over for the original, and there wasn't a backup of it. This thing had overwritten it. And remember being very thankful for your graciousness and your understanding, and this being new territory for me. And then we actually, if I recall right, we sat there, and because I had already fortunately, I had all the footage and everything organized and categorized as you're supposed to do with these things. And so we were able to go and hit that, and you and I sat down together and put together a new rough that actually became what is your current speaking reel.
And it's I mean, that's the first thing you went above and beyond with. When I saw the final cut of the speaking reel 5 years ago, I'm like, wow. And when I watch it now, I'm still like, wow, it's so cool. Not because the guy with the speech impediment is speaking, but because it tells such a neat story, and it's done in a lighthearted but valuable way. And but if I had seen that you sent that email, and I had watched that Star Wars movie and got it all mad and like, oh my gosh, Chris doesn't know his stuff, and stomped off. Or else, if I had sent you that email and you've been like, what does Jason want? I give him a good mock-up, and he's hemming and hawing, and you had stomped off. We would have missed all this.
Yeah, well, absolutely. That's such a good point about the starting point, about The one thing I definitely credit you with is I think a lot of people, when they don't get something that they want, they get angry or they get reactionary to it. And a lot of times, rightfully, understandably so. But if you're too quick, if you don't approach it with a level head or let things cool down before you respond, you can burn bridges. And likewise, if you would have sent me an aggressive email and I would have been, not knowing not tried to get to the bottom of it, and I would have, been aggressive in return or just not responded in return or anything like that. It's just crazy to see that this entire relationship might not exist over one mistake, essentially. So I really credit you for having that willpower, even though I didn't get that initial response. I figured, oh, he's just taking his time. And then when we were in person, we had the opportunity to actually discuss it and talk about it. And I got to see what you saw.
When you talk about burning bridges early on, it occurs to me we would have never known what was on the other side of the bridge we burned. If someone mentioned your name, I would now just be going, oh, Chris, he sent me this video once, and it didn't look like he knew what he was doing, or you would hear my name and go, oh, Jason, he sent me an aggressive email. He's an over-demanding customer. But we would have never known all we can produce.
Yeah, I mean, it's nuts. And speaking of things that we produce, there's so much that you and I kind of did together, so much that through working with you, I had come from a place where I always designed the front end of websites, but I knew nothing about WordPress, nothing about building my own, nothing about doing all the back end stuff. Videos, like I said, that speaker reel was the start of it. And that wasn't even in the right program. During the course of the 5 years we've worked together, I've gone on to learn an extensive amount of stuff and expand into these things where now I am a web developer. Now I am a video editor. Not just that, but we've rented cameras and set up. I mean, I rented a camera I knew nothing about, learned about it. And then we jumped in and we filmed, an awesome, what do we call that one? From awkward to awesome, I think is what we call it. But
I can never remember because at one point we had this really long title for it. Yeah, we just filmed all that in your garage in a couple of days, plus all those awkwardly awesome videos, which we'll show using a year later.
Yeah, and that was crazy because that was just I knew going in, it's okay, well, we're spending or you're spending, you're making a certain amount of investment into renting this equipment. And my question was, how do we get the most out of this rental period as we can? I think we had it for, essentially 3 days. The first day I learned it, the second and third day we filmed, and then we had to send it back. So it was okay, so how do we get the most out of this? And I had kind of collected some questions and thought of some questions on my own. And then in between takes, to kind of lighten the mood, I just shot them out to you. And you were brilliant with them. And that's why it became a series. I had envisioned the series prior to us launching it. But it really turned out into being, even more than what I envisioned. My hope with it was being able to capture you in a state of flow, as your live audiences normally see you, because you have just such a brilliance in performing just at the drop of a hat, and you adapt to practically any situation around you. And what we ended up capturing was just that part of your talent in speaking from stage, your ability to just access that flow and just your natural humor that came out. And we didn't do when we did those awkwardly awesome answers. I know some of your viewers have seen them. or some of the viewers of this have likely seen them. Those weren't thought out. You had no idea what the question was. We didn't do a second take on any of them. Every single one is just as you see it, And yeah, I just think it speaks to your brilliance, and it was one more thing that we can add out there to expand upon the brand and to give people a better sense of who you are. And I also really like the idea of people connecting to you through that, through videos, through your social media presence, through all this stuff. Not that to mean to the point where they don't have to only see you from stage to get an idea for who you are, and what you
do. I love awkwardly awesome answers because they show me in a more natural light. Like I say that when I'm under fluorescent light. You alluded earlier to, like, in the last 5 years you've learned one thing after another as we move forward from website backend to book design to just on and on and on and on. It seemed like so many people, including me at times, instead of learning something new, just resort to, I can't do that, I'm not good at that, I don't know how to do that. What keeps you interested in trying something new, even though it's new, so there's going to be a learning curve?
Well, it's real interesting. So I had that's a really good question, because I had come from a place before where I was very, and he walks away. Guess I'm on my own here. Well, everybody. So, as Jason was saying, and he's back. But as you were saying, or as I was saying, I guess, I had actually come from a place of thinking the opposite, thinking that, I had kind of had my opportunity to learn what I was going to learn or go into the businesses I was going to go into, and that was it. And, my company, Creative Beard, had started with the dream of, being a professional graphic designer and running my own studio, if you will, running my own business, if you will. And I did that, and I did it relatively successfully. But then I also was in in a marriage that wasn't so great, and I kind of did a good job of running my business into the ground during the end of that, during that time. And part of what made me drive it into the ground was this belief that I couldn't expand and get the type of clients and work that I needed. Like, I just felt like I was stuck in this loop of only doing, so I think we should also mention that this was around the time of, the 2008 crash, stock market crash and everything.
Wow.
Suddenly I went from doing really well where I was specialized in branding and logos and everything else and people, big names.
And you were winning awards and stuff.
Right. I was having my work was published in many top selling publications, and I was winning awards too. Suddenly I'm competing with people who don't understand what a brand or what a logo is, and they just wanted a business card, and they just saw it as slapping something together that you can do for $65. And during that time I was working 3 times as hard for the same, to make the same amount of money to keep the stuff over my head. And what I found is, like, people just, they have a different outlook on graphic design in general. I think it's real simple, and they think, oh, well, my cousin can do that, or my kid can do that, or this person can do that person can do that. And
if your cousin was Chris Taylor, they would be right.
Yeah, they would be right in that case. But I just found that it kind of got exhausting to have to constantly educate the clients I was getting, and it just kind of I don't know, burnt me out to a certain extent. And I remember thinking like I really felt limited. I specialized so much in the design portion of it, but there was work to be had, and there was work to be had with web design. It seemed like web design was one area where people don't understand that. They have no idea for the most part what goes into it, and when they dabble in it, it's so confusing that that's something that they understand and that they justify, paying for, because they don't fully get it. And that's the same is true of like video work too. Everyone could dabble in it and experiment with it, but for some reason, those two mediums people value higher than sometimes your branding, which in truth is actually, can be much more important than both of those combined. But anyways, I think I'm rambling a bit, but the point being, I had gotten to this point where I didn't think I could learn those skills. I thought I missed my opportunity. Mm-hmm. I had attempted to learn them. I attempted to learn code and some stuff like that, but trying to go in through the coding thing on my own, it wasn't the right place to start. And so I kind of given up on it. And then, suddenly I left that relationship. I got into a better headspace. I was like starting all over again, essentially. And I started kind of rebuilding the business again from the ground up. And I was thinking, how do I want to rebuild this? And fortunately, that's when our paths crossed, and where it was like, oh, there's this opportunity here. He needs a speaking reel. Okay, well, this gives me an opportunity to kind of tap into my knowledge of what I know about film production and video editing, and kind of learn this on the fly. Because I was never afraid to shy away from something I didn't know how to do. I always had this belief that I could learn to do it, until I got to that very toxic period of thinking where I convinced myself that I couldn't, and often for these sorts of things, I would contract other people to help me out during a project, right? But I really desired to be able to do it all from scratch. And so, yeah, that gave me the opportunity to learn that. And then when you needed the website, I was like, okay, well, I think at first, even initially, I was probably considering doing the front end and contracting someone again. But my experience with contracting people sometimes is that they're on their time and you're on yours. And there's a lot of project management involved, and there's constant staying on top of them, and even doing your best. You never know if they're going to come through when you need them, which is fine when you're working on your own stuff. But when you're working with clients and you are the face of interaction with a client, you can't be having someone promise you a deliverable on this date and then not coming through, because it's only going to look bad on you and your business. So I had really desired to be able to do it all myself, so that I'm the only person either, scoring the home run or dropping the ball, so to speak. But anyways, I think to get back to the core of the question, I developed along the way of doing it that pretty much all you have to do is start. And everything I've ever done in life, it literally comes with just starting. You don't have to always know how, you just have to have kind of that desire to do it. And with me, there's normally just the knowing that, hey, I can figure this out. Hey, I can do this. And then starting, and then just keep going when you encounter issues or encounter the walls or the problems. There are issues galore to be found, and you're always going to find them at the start of any project.
There are issues galore to be found, and you're always going to find them at the start of any project.
Absolutely, and I think, and that's the other thing. So not only in starting, but just in persisting, and when you encounter a problem, there's so many opportunities where I would keep trying and trying and trying, and I had more than enough excuses to be like, forget this, and walk away from it. you know. But if I didn't get the result I was going for, then what would walking away from it, do? I didn't want to admit defeat. I still knew that a solution was possible. In fact, my entire job is about finding solutions, whether I'm branding or making a video or doing anything else. I'm trying to find a solution to problems, right? And what that problem is, that problem could be, how do you present somebody to the world? How do you encapsulate what this person does and stands for, the essence of this person, into something? It's all problem solving. So when I run into an immediate problem, the only option I have is to continue running up against it until I figure out a way through it. Uh-oh.
I was going to make that into a banner, and speaking of starting, it didn't work right.
Throwing a banner in there?
Oh, sure.
Oh, I find solutions to problems.
Yeah. Your quote was much better, but then I lost it. So that's what we got.
I love
it. Speaking of just starting, this is something we just started on, and it turned out like this. Turned out beautifully, but I just started by writing a single word, and then I gave you a manuscript that was edited, but just a Word document, and you made it beautiful.
Well, thank you, man. Yeah, I remember you actually sent me a few versions of it, and you said, "Hey, don't read this. Just keep it somewhere safe. I don't want to lose it." So I remember I had several versions, and I listened to you. I never read it. I was curious, but yeah, that was something that, again, I forgot. There's the whole book. There was the whole Kindle journey, trying to get it. I mean, Kindle was really the first step into the website, because it involved a lot of coding. It involved a lot of, essentially taking the manuscript of the book and making it work. You could do a really slap together version. And I think that's what a lot of people who self-publish through Kindle do. You could take the Word document and just load it in there. But that's the other end with my stuff, right? I've always wanted to deliver something that is quality. I don't settle for just half-assing something, so to speak, right? And so I remember making it translate the way, as close as I could, to the way it looked in the book. That presented its fair share of challenges, but in the end of the day, we ran up against a lot of walls, but we came out the other side, and we're better for it.
We actually launched the website and the book both on the same day.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So then I hit enter and then I show. Oh wow. Well, thanks for being my first guest. When like anything, the more I do this, the more smooth it'll get. Like when I went over to get the book, I should put you on this view, so the audience didn't see me go over to get the book. I mean, before we go, that face reminds me. Will you talk, since it is October Would you talk briefly about what you love about Halloween?
Oh, wow. I don't know. That might be a loaded question. Yeah, I don't know. I've always loved Halloween season. I love scary movies and horror movies and all that good stuff. And it's funny because I've met a lot of people who don't, and I've met a lot of people, especially as we've gone to some of the same functions and have been. I don't think we've ever been in the same yoga class together, but we have.
We actually haven't.
Yeah,
That's a good point.
but we both have individually done yoga, and we both have individually gone, to different seminars and different things like that.
And we may have eaten frozen yogurt together at some point too.
Yeah, quite possible. Maybe we do it on one of these. Just kidding. But anyways, in this community, if you will, that we both have had experience with, there's a lot of people that a lot of times have told me, "Oh, I don't watch scary movies or I don't watch horror movies because I don't like to bring that sort of energy in to my life." And that's fine. I respect anyone's reasons for not liking it or anything else. But ultimately, I heard someone say somewhere, and I don't know who it is, so I can't attribute the quote to them, but I always really liked it. And basically, like horror movies and scary movies, it's not that you're bringing this negative energy in or anything else. It's that they allow you an opportunity to process your fears, right?
Mm.
So it's a safe place in which to learn to, to process your deeper rooted fears and everything. And I always thought that was really neat. But for me too, it started out when I was young. It started out just a lot of fun, from my mom late at night. Sometimes would have me, sit down next to her on the couch and we'd watch this scary movie. And she'd hold the popcorn bowl up over my face so I wouldn't see like the real scary part or the real inappropriate.
The popcorn bowl over your face.
Yeah. And I remember watching Poltergeist, when it came out when I was young. And I mean, talk about probably one of the best kids horror movies that's just as good for adults and still holds up to this day. That original Poltergeist. I think they came along and remade it at some point, but I think the remake has already been forgotten. But that original one, it's just that and Star Wars for me as a kid. Those were the big cornerstones, And
you're a Star Wars fan, Chris?
No, not at all. But so all that kind of led into itself, and I've always, I've seen just everything that surrounds that, right? Everything that surrounds Halloween. I see it as fun. I see it as playful. I see it as a way to, I guess as a way to process those deeper fears that everyone has about life and death and everything else. And, it's interesting too, some of the people that, I think, for instance, of Rob Zombie, who makes just these absolutely demented movies. And a lot of people see that and would be like, what in the heck goes on in that guy's, mind or frame of mind, anything, where's that coming from? He's got to be just totally, but then you meet him and it's like he's literally one of the nicest, most down-to-earth guys who's nothing like what is portrayed. He's just, he's finding a way to explore his shadow side or his dark side or whatever you want to call it, And in doing that, it's helping other people to kind of explore and process theirs, I guess, in a way.
Explore and persist. Because in a horror movie, the kind of the good guys and girls, if you will, they're going to need to persist to come out alive at the end of the horror movie, right?
Yeah, I mean, most of them. Sometimes it doesn't happen.
Yeah, I guess not. And Star Wars is definitely about an epic tale of persistence.
Right. That it certainly is. Against all odds, really, right?
And I think that's a good message for us to keep remembering, and we do. We're constantly inspiring each other to persist, and it's just a good message for all of us during this time where so much is going on that it seems we can't control, and some days it feels like we're all characters in a horror movie. All unintentional characters in a horror movie called 2020.
Surreal reality show these days, for sure. But you brought up Star Wars, and not to get too into it, but one thing I found interesting with what the newer ones did, more specifically the second one that a lot of people seem to be divided on, is everyone wanted to see that where we left off with those movies, with this huge win, we wanted to see that those characters just continued on this upward trajectory, right? And instead what we got was this hero, this guy who is this Jedi who had defeated the Empire, who had achieved this huge amount of success.
Are you talking about Jar Jar Binks?
Yeah, Jar Jar Binks. Jar Jar Binks Skywalker. Anyway, so Luke, here he's this guy, and everyone was disappointed that we didn't get to pick up on him just having never faltered or anything, and we end up seeing a guy who's totally lost his faith, totally lost his way, is broken, and doubts everything that he's ever done. He doubts even the things that he's done. And I don't know about you, but I know in my life, as I've gotten older, it doesn't always stay in an upward trajectory. Like sometimes you fall off, and in these times too, man, it's totally okay. There's a lot of people that have relapsed or have had issues or have gotten angry or fallen off. And, the ultimate point of that story is that you can always find your way back, that there's a way to do it, to basically, it happens. It's part of life too, things aren't always going to be perfect and great. But when you do fall off, it's always an option to start again, and get back on.
This is perfect because you're articulating imperfect best, which is one of our central messages.
Yes, indeed. It runs through everything, much like the Force.
You can always find your way back. Well, thanks so much, Chris, for all you do to make our vision into reality. It's so exciting working with you, and I'm constantly inspired. And thanks for being my first guest on the Awkwardly Awesome podcast.
Yeah, thanks. This is also my first podcast, which I'm sure everybody knows.
You were wonderful. I'm sure everyone knows that it was my first time doing production on a podcast. So.
You're doing a great job, man.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
I look forward to seeing what the rest of them are, and we should do it again sometime.
Yeah. I'm excited to have you back on our show.
Yes, indeed. Maybe next time I'll tell some some stories.
Oh wow. Be exciting. Well, thank you, and to all of you listening, thanks for coming on. If you have any comments for Chris or I, please put them in the comments. And until next time.